Woman who displays an act of honesty soon gets the surprise of her life. If you found a wallet fat with cash sitting in the middle of a sidewalk and no one was around, what would you do? The honest thing would be to use the information inside to return the money to its owner. But being honest isn't always easy, especially when there isn't anybody watching. When a young driver named Sydney bumped her car into another while backing out of a crowded parking lot, she was overwhelmed with guilt. But she tried to do the right thing. When the car's owner finally tracked her down, she couldn't believe what the decision she made was leading to. Sydney was a young woman who loved to shop. She would frequently drive to her local mall to visit all her favorite stores and leave her car in the parking lot. But one day her usual trip took a nerve-wracking turn. One afternoon, however, she pulled into the parking lot and became slightly apprehensive. The lot was more full than it usually was, and fitting her car into a spot was going to prove to be challenging. She finally settled on a spot, but when she pulled in, there wasn't even enough room for her to open her door. So Sydney backed out to look elsewhere. And that's when she gasped. As she was backing out, Sydney felt her car bump the vehicle next to hers. She immediately panicked as she'd never been in an accident before. How exactly was she going to handle this? She first needed to see just how much damage she'd caused. Luckily, her car was fine, but the other car had a scratch that left a black paint smudge on the bumper. Feeling guilty, Sydney wrote a note explaining what happened and left it underneath the other vehicle's windshield wipers. She made sure to include her phone number so they'd contact her for insurance information, but little did she know who she was leaving the note for. The car belonged to Stuart Edge, and when it comes to the world of YouTube, many people know exactly who he is. He joined the website in 2012, and since then, he's accumulated millions of subscribers and hundreds of millions of views. Of all the people Sydney could have literally bumped into, it was someone who made hugely popular internet videos. If Stuart wanted to get even with Sydney, he had the means to do so on a global scale. Unbeknownst to Sydney, Stuart and his crew were filming nearby where she was shopping that day. Once they wrapped up a couple hours after Sydney's accident, Stuart saw the note and decided to get the camera back out. Stuart read the note into the camera. He was in awe of how honest Sydney was, considering the mark on his car was barely noticeable. He met a lot of people in his life, but this note was clearly from someone with a kind heart. And so he set out on a mission. One of Stuart's crew members suggested pranking Sydney somehow. She thought they should play a lighthearted joke on the honest woman and record it all for their next internet video. And they knew exactly what to do. Stuart's friend pulled out her cell phone and, pretending to be the owner of the car Sydney hit, called her. Sydney was so apologetic, and Stuart's friend suggested they meet up to exchange information. This was where Stuart came in. After agreeing on a nearby location, Stuart and his crew parked across the street and saw Sydney waiting alone at a table. Stuart sat down at the table next to hers, and the two started to chat. Stuart asked Sydney why she was there, and she told him how she hit a car in a parking lot and was waiting to meet the vehicle's owner. After a bit more small talk, Stuart finally pulled out the big reveal. Stuart told Sydney the whole thing was a setup. He pointed out the camera and told her who she was. Sydney couldn't believe it. To top it all off, Stuart gave her $200 just for telling the truth. And Sydney wasn't alone in her willingness to be kind. Even though Elmer Alvarez lived in his car, he made a move no one expected when he found something valuable in the street. Alvarez had been homeless for several months in New Haven, Connecticut, so he understood the difficulties of the months ahead. Times had been worse for Elmer, despite his current situation. Drug addiction had led Elmer down a difficult path. Even though he didn't have a stable place to rest his head each night, he managed to kick his addictions by attending NA meetings. Talk about beating the odds. Unfortunately, finding a way out of being homelessness constantly tormented him. Getting yourself off the streets is much easier said than done. But pacing the familiar streets on one chilly November morning, Elmer walked right up to an opportunity. Right in the center of the path was a bit of paper. Most people walking by wouldn't give the scrap a second glance. But Elmer stopped and examined the forgotten note. It wasn't a discarded receipt or a bit of trash. The paper was a freshly signed check. Air whooshed from his lungs when his eyes landed on the amount that was written on the line. The amount of the check was a stunning $10,000. With it endorsed and ready to go, Elmer could have transformed his life with that kind of cheddar. No one was around. Nothing was stopping him from running to the nearest bank. But taking the money never crossed Elmer's mind, not for a second. He turned the check over and, lo and behold, a phone number was in fact listed on the back. Elmer walked the streets until he managed to track down a friend with a cell phone. As a Spanish speaker, he had a friend make a call to the check's addressee.